Welcome back to Survive the Horror, where we delve into the darkness that lurks just beyond the light. Tonight, we bring you a tale stitched together from the frayed edges of fear and survival. In the battle for the farm, we join Jin as he steps into the hellish reality of a farm under siege. The Reynolds family stands at the precipice of their own survival, armed and resolute against a tide of the undead and the desperate McLeans. As the alarm blares, their world tilts on its axis, and every heartbeat counts in this harrowing struggle against the dark. But as the dust settles and the screams fade into an eerie silence, Jin finds himself haunted by echoes of a past he can never escape. Smash that like button. If we get to 25 likes, we'll dive even deeper into Clifford's story. It wasn't long before we realized that the world outside wasn't just full of the infected, Clifford said, his voice dropping to a near whisper. There were worse things out there. People who'd lost whatever shred of humanity they had left. Jin's grip on the notebook tightened. The McLeans? Clifford's eyes darkened, the name itself enough to bring back the horror of that day. Yeah, the McLeans. We'd heard about them from some of the other folks in the area, a group of raiders, ruthless as they come. They'd take whatever they wanted and kill whoever got in their way. We knew they were trouble, but we didn't think they'd come out this far. Just as Clifford was about to continue, a sudden, piercing alarm filled the room, its shrill sound cutting through the night like a blade. Jin's eyes shot to Clifford, whose expression had shifted from the grimness of memory to sharp, focused concern. That's the perimeter alarm, Clifford said, his voice low and tense. He stood up, his hand instinctively moving to the rifle propped against the wall. Looks like we've got company. Jin felt his pulse quicken as he grabbed his recorder and followed Clifford to the door. Outside, the darkness loomed, and the distant echoes of the alarm seemed to meld with the faint, guttural growls carried on the wind. As they stepped out onto the porch, Jin could see the outlines of movement near the edge of the farm, shapes in the dark, shuffling, stumbling, infected, drawn by the noise. But something else was out there too, something more organized, more deliberate, the McLeans. Clifford glanced at Jin, his expression one of steely determination. It's time to work, ladies. Chapter 6. The Battle for the Farm. The piercing alarm had barely faded when Clifford and his family sprang into action. With practiced precision, they armed themselves with an array of weapons, their faces set in grim determination. Clifford handed Jin a flashlight and a sidearm, though Jin was more of a bystander than a fighter. Emma, with her steely eyes and determined stride, led the charge. The family moved quickly and silently, every motion coordinated, every step purposeful. The farm was their fortress, and they were its last line of defense. The remaining raiders were using the zombie horde as cover to breach the property. Clifford and his son stationed themselves on the roof of the house, their rifles ready. The fields below were a chaotic sea of undead, lumbering toward the sound of the alarm. Stay sharp. Clifford barked, his voice carrying over the din of moans and the clatter of weapons. Melissa, Clifford's eldest daughter, joined the fray with a fierce look of determination. Armed with a shotgun, she moved with purpose, clearing out the infected with each blast. Her bravery was matched only by her skill, and Jin could see the family's unity in action as they fought off the attack. The family's traps, which had been a labor of love and survival, sprang into action. Pits with sharpened spikes were hidden just beneath the surface, and as the infected stumbled into them, their shrieks were abruptly silenced. The sounds of metal snapping against flesh echoed across the field, as raiders caught in snares were jerked into the air, their struggles ending in a grisly meal for the ravenous infected. Jin, crouched behind a makeshift barricade, watched in awe as Emma, Lizzie, and Melissa wielded their weapons with deadly precision. Each strike and shot was a calculated move, a swift end to a rotting foe. The family's efficiency was almost mechanical, their coordination a testament to their unyielding will to survive. From his vantage point, Jin could see the raiders beginning to falter. One by one, the McLeans fell, their heads punctured by sniper fire or tangled in traps, left to be devoured by the infected they had so ruthlessly exploited. The night air was filled with the crackle of gunfire, the hiss of crossbow bolts, and the occasional scream of a raider meeting their end. As the battle dragged on, a few zombies remained, crawling aimlessly over the blood-soaked earth. Clifford took a deep breath, signaling to his family. "Clear," he shouted. Melissa and Lizzie moved with swift efficiency, their wooden pikes finding the remaining zombies' heads, ensuring that none would rise again. With a crossbow in hand, Clifford methodically picked off the last of the McLeans, his aim true and his expression stoic. The fight seemed to end as abruptly as it had begun. The air was filled with the silence of victory, broken only by the distant moans of the undead still trapped within the farm's defenses. Jin looked around, his admiration for the family's proficiency barely contained. They had turned their home into a fortress, and in doing so, had not only survived but had triumphed against overwhelming odds. As the adrenaline began to fade, Clifford and Emma turned their attention to Jin. Emma approached him with a concerned look. "You're not in the best shape after all that," she said, her voice softened by worry. She gently took Jin's arm and led him to a makeshift medical station they had set up in the barn. They provided Jin with basic first aid, making sure he was cleaned up and bandaged properly. Emma and Melissa worked together with practiced ease, tending to his injuries while maintaining their vigilance. With Jin patched up and the immediate danger past, Clifford glanced at the clock. "We should get you back to the gas station," he said, the fatigue of the night finally settling into his voice. The family, battered but unbowed, helped Jin gather his things and prepare to leave. As they drove away from the farm, Jin looked back at the fortress that had withstood the night's terror. The resilience and resourcefulness of the Reynolds family were nothing short of remarkable, a beacon of hope in a world turned upside down. The drive to the gas station was quiet, the events of the night still heavy in the air. Once they arrived, Jin thanked Clifford and his family for their bravery and assistance. He knew their story would be a critical part of the record he was compiling, a testament to human strength in the face of unimaginable horror. With a final wave, Jin headed towards his next destination, one of the best hospitals before the outbreak had begun. He was in search of answers, hoping that within the walls of that facility, he might uncover the secrets behind the outbreak and perhaps find a glimmer of hope for a world desperately in need of it. Chapter 7. Echoes of the Past. Jin Lee drove through the desolate landscape, his truck weaving between abandoned vehicles and overgrown vegetation. The roads, once bustling with life, now lay eerily silent, save for the occasional shuffle of the undead and the rustle of wind through the long grass. The sight of fields choked with zombies, moving like weeds in a forgotten garden, only deepened the isolation he felt. His thoughts drifted back to the early days of the pandemic, a time that now seemed both distant and impossibly close. He remembered the office where he had first encountered the undercurrents of chaos, the place where everything had begun to unravel. It had been a typical day at the office. Jin was hunched over his desk, typing out an article on the upcoming presidential race. The newsroom buzzed with the usual chatter, reporters discussing sources and deadlines, their voices a steady hum in the background. The air was thick with the scent of fresh coffee and the static energy of a busy workday. Jin had risen from his seat to close his office door, a rare impulse driven by an uncharacteristic urge for privacy. As he did, he noticed the unusual activity around him. The office felt more frenetic than normal, with hurried conversations and anxious glances exchanged between colleagues. He resumed typing, trying to focus on the task at hand, but something was off. The buzz of conversation seemed to fade into a muffled background noise, replaced by a faint, rhythmic tapping sound. Jin frowned, distracted. He glanced around his office, the floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city below. The tapping persisted, insistent and out of place. Jin's gaze shifted outside, where nothing moved but the occasional gust of wind stirring the empty streets far below. His office was on the 11th floor of a 20-story building. No one should have been tapping on his window. Curiosity got the better of him. He stood up and approached the window, peering out into the cityscape. The tapping continued, almost like a deliberate signal. It was then that he saw the horrifying reality unfold before him. People were falling from the windows of nearby buildings, their screams mingling with the shrieks of the infected below. The scene was chaotic and surreal. The infected, their eyes wild and their movements erratic, were climbing up the sides of the buildings, their gnashing teeth and clawing hands reaching out for anyone within their grasp. As the people above were bitten or torn apart, they fell helplessly from their perches, their bodies hitting the ground in gruesome splatters. Jin's heart pounded as he witnessed the carnage. The office, once a sanctuary of routine, had turned into a vantage point for witnessing the collapse of civilization. His colleagues, absorbed in their tasks, hadn't noticed the growing panic in Jin's eyes. He felt a cold sweat break out as he realized the true extent of the disaster unfolding before him. The sound of breaking glass and the screams of the falling victims echoed through the air. Jin stumbled back from the window, his mind racing. The normalcy of his workday was replaced by a nightmare, the city below becoming a stage for an apocalyptic horror show. In a state of shock, Jin grabbed his phone and dialed emergency services, but the line was dead. A reminder of how disconnected he had become from the world. The tapping on the window now felt like a cruel joke, a prelude to the terror he was witnessing. Back in the present, Jin shook himself from the memory. The roads he traveled were now a stark reminder of how quickly everything had changed. His once bustling city had become a wasteland, and the fear he had first felt on that day had only multiplied in the face of the global apocalypse. As he navigated through the abandoned streets, Jin reflected on how the initial signs of the pandemic had seemed so distant, so unreal, until they weren't. He had been caught unawares then, and now he was driven by the need to understand what had truly happened and why. The deserted roads stretched out before him, and he pressed on, determined to reach the hospital and uncover more about the origins of the outbreak. Each mile he covered was a reminder of the vast, silent witness the world had become, an echo of the past that haunted his every step. As Jin drives away from the fortress of the farm, one question lingers in the air. Will he find the answers he seeks within the walls of that abandoned hospital, or will the truth shatter him like glass? Do us a favor. Smash that like button, and let's reach for 25 likes to unlock the next chapter of this nightmare sooner. And if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe, because in this world, knowledge is power, and you won't want to miss the horrors yet to come. Remember, when darkness descends, only the brave or the foolhardy dare to face it head on.